The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. The mother of Jesus and his brothers arrived at the house. Standing outside, they sent word to Jesus and called him. A crowd seated around him told him, "Your mother and your brothers and your sisters are outside asking for you." But he said to them in reply, "Who are my mother and my brothers?" And looking around at those seated in the circle, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother." The Gospel of the Lord. The Gospel that we just heard today, if we read it without context, we may have the wrong impression that Jesus was disrespecting and denying his own mother and his relatives. When Jesus was teaching the crowds, people told him that his mother and his relatives were asking to see him. But Jesus didn't respond to that request. He told everyone in the crowd, "Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does the will of God is my mother, my brother, and my sister." At first glance, it seemed like Jesus was denying his own mother and his relatives who were waiting for him. But if we listen more carefully to his words, Jesus was actually praising them, lifting them up as examples for us. We all know well that the mother of Jesus, the Blessed Virgin Mary, was doing the will of God with her life, especially in her willingness to carry the Son of God in her own womb, to nurture him for 30 years in the family, and to trust in the mission of salvation to the very end. That is why, by emphasizing to the crowds about those who are worthy to become his family members, Jesus glorified the example of his mother, as well as of those who put God first, those who seek and follow the will of God. And this message of the gospel today also fits well with the legacy of St. Thomas Aquinas that our church celebrates today. Thomas was sent by his parents to the Benedictine monastery at 5 years old, hoping that one day he would become a monk, which was very popular back in the medieval time. But Thomas had another plan. He left the monastery and became instead a Dominican friar and eventually a priest. As a religious, a priest, a philosopher, a theologian, and a professor, Thomas Aquinas, through his intensive writings, was among the most influential and consequential teacher in our Catholic Church, with his most well-known work, yet unfinished, called Summa Theologica, a compendium of the main theological teachings of the Catholic Church that are still teaching today in seminaries and to lay people alike. I also studied Summa Theologica when I was in the seminary. It still has valid meanings to us today in our faith. St. Thomas Aquinas did the will of God in his life through his gift of academic work as well as his holy life as a religious. Let us also become the brothers and sisters in the family of Jesus through our own practice of God's teachings and our faithfulness to do the will of God in our life through all the moments that God has given us here in this life. May God, who has begun a good work in us, also bring it to fruitful completion. Amen.